Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector Colonas and Mike LaRosa.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another weekly recap from the team here at This Week in Coworking. I am Hector Colonas, and I'm joined by Mike LaRosa. Mike, how are you this week?
I'm doing great. It's been super busy. I think everyone's cramming in things before we hit that holiday season. It's that fall business sprint. So I'm glad to be here. We're recording a little earlier than usual. So we're starting to see how things are going. I think this is 3 weeks in a row. So we're keeping strong.
Definitely keeping strong. And I just pictured that sprint since like everywhere here in Jersey City is all dressed up for Halloween. Just these corporates wearing like little Batman helmets and just running down the street. That's just the image that popped into my head. And I'm a little child at heart, and I found that hysterical. So we are here for week 44. There was quite a bit of interesting pieces in the news, a little bit different from the stuff we normally see. So definitely one to go and read if you find yourself coming off that Halloween high, eating the kids' candy, and trying to figure out what you should be looking at this week. Check the newsletter out. There's some pretty interesting links. Mike, what caught your attention?
So first and foremost, it was pretty interesting news coming out of India that Office Square, a brand there, has signed the second most followed Indian influencer on Instagram. And so they're positioning this as a really big play to get a huge public figure out there and act as the face of the brand. I know that while we were at GWA earlier this year, there was some conversation from, I believe, Alliance that does like micro influencing, and they're starting to work with TikTok creators and whatnot. But I would compare this almost to AMC's Nicole Kidman, right? They're really trying to use a big star to get the brand out there. And I think this is the first we've seen ever. I don't know, like this. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it is probably the first that I can think of where it's an unaffiliated celebrity, right? It's someone who has their own thing, does their own brand, has their own businesses, but is stepping in as the face of a flex brand. Now, if we're wrong here and your brand has done this before, write into us and let us know. We'd love to dig in and recorrect ourselves. But on the flip side, we have seen some sort of TV and sports celebrities launch their own spaces. If we look back here in Manhattan, a couple of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we had Damon John from Shark Tank fame and from Fubu. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
He started a co-working space, mostly for his own like incubated companies called Blueprint in the fashion district in New York. We also had Carl Shirley earlier this year, actually, launch a space called The Process. So we are seeing this slight shift between celebrity and flex and seeing if that has pull factor. But I think you're right. I think this is the first time we've seen a non-affiliated influencer or celebrity step in. Now, if anyone is listening and has connections with Ryan Gosling, we would love to talk to him about promoting co-working. We probably can't afford. I have Mint Mobile, so I'm happy to kind of promote that. But if he wants to come in as a spokesman for co-working, I would love that.
I think you meant Ryan Reynolds, but I would take either of them.
You're absolutely right, and that's why
both fine Canadian gentlemen,
and that's why Ryan will not support co-working, and it's all Hector's fault. So send me your hate mail at not the Oh man, that's funny.
All right. Next up, you've spotted a pretty interesting article on LinkedIn. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So this piece actually looks at a topic that we've seen a few times, just from a totally different angle. Simon Baker, who is a global prop tech investor and advisor, shared a LinkedIn post looking at how a site called Property Finder is adding dynamic pricing into the mix. Up until now, we've seen dynamic pricing added to the actual listed resource. So what you're booking changes prices based on demand. What this platform is doing instead is changing the price to list based on demand in that area. So if you're listing in an area where there's not a lot of demand, the price to list is lower. If you're listing somewhere where there's a lot of demand, the price to list is higher, therefore increasing the revenue for the platform. So I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing something similar to that coming into the co-working industry, where we already are starting to see platforms offering the former kind, where if hot desks aren't very popular in this space, the price of hot desks come down. But if they're very busy, the price goes up. So I'm wondering, Mike, do you think that we'll see other aggregators, especially those that charge listing fees as opposed to commissions? Do you think we'll see some dynamic play from them in this industry?
Oh, for sure. And this is where I apologize to any of our regular listeners 3 episodes in for me literally hauling out my soapbox. No, I think that dynamic pricing, unfortunately, like any other industry, it's going to be something that we are going to have to navigate and adapt slash embrace, right? It happened with, I think maybe Uber was maybe the first one to use the term, right? And then look at what airlines and hotels have always done it for points. Airlines started shifting away from set charts for award tickets or whatnot. I think that as more and more people adopt to how office space is consumed, it's just the natural progression, right? I've toured locations that were like, oh, we're super super busy during Comic Con because they're in San Diego and they can get 3 times the regular price for that venue than if they could on a random Saturday. So why not, right? Like hashtag capitalism without sounding awful. Um, but it is fascinating to see where this idea is starting to pop up, right? And so this was interesting. I, to be honest, had to do a reread because at first I thought that this was all focused about helping the operators set their price, which there's other players in the market that have done that. But this is actually more so about the platform. So I'm not surprised. And I think that it might be something that might help those platforms be better partners to those spaces so that when it is slower, they are taking less of a cut or whatnot. I don't know. I don't necessarily think that there is all bad, but I'm not a delusional optimist where I'm like, this isn't all great either.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think, see, I'm on the other side. Having watched the sentiment towards co-working over the last 10 plus years, one of the things that especially small businesses, freelancers, solo companies, what they loved about co-working is what they saw as the price was what the price was. They saw it was very clear to understand. There wasn't these lengthy contracts with additional add-ons. And going back to what Sophia was saying in a recent podcast episode with us about what the hotels do, that wasn't something that co-working spaces were known for. They were kind of known $100, $200, $300 for a hot desk. This is what you get. This is what it is. I think as more and more operators chase the benefits of dynamic pricing, it could murky the water and the trust that some people who've learned to use co-working have towards the spaces. If they know that it's supposed to be the same price and then it changes based whether they log in on a Wednesday or a Monday or a Sunday, whether they're looking from New York or looking from Philly, for example, and that's affecting all the pricing because we're seeing all these algorithms play in, right? And affecting what the price is to increase the yield for the operator. I just worry that may ruin some of the experience or the trustworthiness and reliability of co-working for folks who are just used to coming in and paying a price. Like I hate booking online because that whole there's 2 seats left, book this now. And then if you come back and they know that you've looked for the second time, the price is higher. And I feel like I'm competing with a platform who's providing a service for it to me, as opposed to how it is right now, where I can take my time to research, but I also know what the price is going to be by the time I take it back to my boss, get approval, get that rubber stamped. I'm not going to come back and there's going to be a new price because there is a conference in town or something like that. So there are benefits to it for the operator side. I'm just worried about the reputational risk on the consumer side.
Yeah, every point that you raise is totally valid. I think though you have to thread a needle because there are different types of customer bases. And so I can totally envision a future where there are local customers that are booking directly with that operator and that operator at the same time is charging dynamic pricing to maybe more of a corporate user, right? Where someone that just wants to lock it in or it's part of a platform. And then that's where a lot of times, and this is happening already, that different operators are charging different price points on the different aggregators as well. And so some of that's already happening where the meeting room might be a different price if you're booking it via third party, rather if you're booking it directly. So I everything you said is valid. I think that's why this is going to be a process, and we're going to see it pop up. And I think maybe the name of the game is, as with anything in business, it's like not always the first person that's successful. So maybe don't be like the MySpace, but try to be like the Facebook. I think that there's a lot going on, but the challenge is that I think everyone agrees with the where the general direction's going, and that the pros may outweigh the cons if well managed. But how do you actually put it all together? And so I think a lot of people throw around different terminologies, and it's like, well, we can do this and we can do that, but this is still based on live inventory, right? So you still have to have these systems talk. And I reach out to co-working spaces day to day in my day job, and everyone's running on different types of automations and Zapier and this, and sometimes people are using Google spreadsheets or whatnot. Something that you posted this week really helped me understand. I'm not super technical, but there are different types of integration. So you just can't say, oh, there's an integration, because it might mean wildly different things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I put out a video this week. I should put it out last week, but it was such a busy week last week. I forgot to submit it for your consideration in the newsletter. So I'm happy that it's in this week. But there are completely different. I mean, we could zoom in so like technical that you could look at, what are the different subtypes of integrations. But what I just put out is just a reminder that not all integrations are built equal. Not all integrations are just live inventory, right? Or just CRM or things like that. But the main thing I want to really put out there is, if you're feeling frustrated that the integrations that you keep hearing and seeing about in our industry don't fit for you, there are alternatives. There is an alternative to having to beg two platforms to build an integration. There is an alternative to going and hiring a dev team to build a custom integration for you. There is an alternative to, sticky taping Zapier and Google Sheets and email and all these pieces together, hoping that you or that knowledge never leaves your business. And that is what we call, at my day job, managed integrations. This idea that when you buy a system to manage your doors or your sensors or whatever, that is what they do great. And we have to step away from this idea that the company you hire to manage your doors is also the same company who should understand how all your systems integrate, or the company that does your invoicing or your inventory or all of that. We really have to step away, because we're leading towards a future where all of our spaces are going to be data driven, and they're going to be highly connected between our businesses, between spaces, between technologies. And if you're not thinking about that as a budget line item, 2024-5 is around the corner, and now is the time to really think about who looks after your integrations and how does that fit into your strategy. And that's what I was trying to get across in the video. So thanks for bringing it up, Mike.
Yeah, no, it's something that I'm fascinated by, because all these different industries have things that already work, but they've had maybe 25, 35, even 50-year head starts. And because this is such a new way of people consuming office space, it's exciting to be a part of it. So I always am fascinated by the conversations that we have. Sometimes I feel a little bit dumb, but I know I'm not. It's just not my strong
Very much.
suit, because it's all Greek to me. It's just all code. Like, just I don't get it. But something I do get is the sales side of the industry. And so it was really interesting to see that there's been a lot more promos popping up for brokers. And as someone who's spent a lot of time supporting the sales with brokers and partnerships and whatnot, I think you had a pretty interesting take on some of these promotions. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts before I chime in with my 2 cents.
I think you're right, Mike. It's very, very interesting to see this week and last week, we saw two very different types of networks offer what we call broker incentives. This is additional benefits above the commission, which may already include a heightened commission for filling desks, filling meeting rooms, closing deals, etc. And this is nothing new. We've been seeing this pretty much since the beginning of co-working, since the kind of rise of WeWork offering 100% commissions to brokers. It got very competitive for a while. It seemed to normalize, but we're seeing this return now to re-incentivizing brokers to put options into those lists that they give to their customers. But what irked me a little bit was, is it not better? And this is going back to actually some content that Flex Engine submitted to us a couple of weeks ago. Is it not better for a broker to put their clients in the best possible space so that when they make a decision or they need to find new space or need to get more space, they come back to that broker? What these incentives do is they kind of point brokers towards recommending an option that may not be the best fit because they're getting an AirPod or an iPhone or whatever. I feel that, once again, getting on my soapbox and evangelizing for the brand and the reputation of co-working, is that not hurting the industry more than it's filling desks? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that looking at some of these promos, none of them are wild like 100% commission. I think when it comes to 100% commission and the wild, wild days of WeWork in its heyday, I think you are right. And I would not be surprised that a lot of that initial churn came from some of those kind of leanings in. I don't know. An AirPod Max to me is not something that's going to move the needle. I viewed this most definitely as an opportunity for the point person and industrious just to get in front of the broker and say, hey, remember, we're here. We've got some cool space that we're trying to move. I don't think any broker is going to really stick their neck out and put their client in a space that they don't think they're going to be happy with for a big egg barbecue. Even though I wouldn't mind a big egg barbecue, I'd love one of those things. I think the 100% commission is and was the issue, right? I think you saw a lot of people wheel and deal during that point in time. But I think clients ultimately pick what they're happiest with and what they want. And I would say clients don't always listen to the brokers, and the brokers are there just to kind of help them transact. So I think brokers play a very important role in decision making, but I don't think they're playing that important of a role that.
So you're saying it's not about the priority, just saying it's just about the price, right? What happens if it was $10,000? Serendipity Labs is saying one lucky broker who fills an office will get a $10,000 all expense paid trip, right? If that keeps pushing that game, could we see $100,000? Could we see $1 million? Is this one of those things where it could snowball?
Sales contests are not new. Companies have sales contests all the time. You either get gift cards or you get like a team retreat at the spa I've gotten before, you get to do a trip or whatever. I think the challenge that I had, and if I had to draw the line, would be the commission. The fact that you're making all that money compared to a trip or a giveaway, or maybe you get $10,000 in a sweepstakes or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm, you know, trying to split hairs. I'd be interested to see what the audience thinks and let us know if you think there's no right or wrong, but if you agree with kind of the hot take. I personally don't have an issue with AirPods or a barbecue. But I would, as a client, have an issue if I felt pushed into a space and I found out that the broker was making that much commission. I just feel like that's more cash out of my pocket. Not really,
Yeah.
but it's like, well, if you maybe could have negotiated something a little bit better.
Yeah, I totally get that. And it does bring up the question of whether a broker's being paid in commission is always looking for the best deal for you. Because if they put you in a premium space versus an economy space, they're already more incentivized to put you in the more expensive space based on the fact that they're being paid on commission, not on space. So
Yeah,
that's definitely a debate. We'll keep, I mean, yeah, as Mike said, if you have got thoughts on this, we have comments on all the podcast channels. Let us know there, or hop over to the newsletter and comment on under the news items there. But let us know what you think, and we will open up a debate there. And happy to dig into what we all think in that forum.
Yeah. And speaking of telling us what you think, I'd love to hear what you think of a couple of the conversations that we've got coming up. So, as you all know, as we've started to kind of get our feels for this podcast format, we've got our weekly recaps like the one we're doing right now. And then Hector's also had a chance to grab some pretty great interviews. So, what are some of the conversations that folks can look forward to in the next coming few weeks so they can make sure that they hit that subscribe button so they don't miss out?
Absolutely. So what we've been able to do is bring in some amazing people like Ryan Fogelman from the Co-Hatch Network, talking about all the things they're doing and how it's so different. If you missed it, Sophia Stolberg interview dropped yesterday, so this week, so definitely listen into that. Then we also have Phil Kirshner, who ex-WeWork, ex-McKinsey, really digging into some really theoretical and actionable insights there. So definitely subscribe for those so they pop up in your feed.
Yep, always love hearing what Phil has to say. His content's really great, so I'm looking forward to those chats. I think that's all we've got for this week. Anything else you want to leave with the folks that are listening, Hector?
That's about it. As always, drop your comments, share this podcast. A lot of folks in co-working world know about the newsletter, but they haven't heard the podcast yet. So share this with your favorite colleagues or your favorite frenemies. And let's see if we can spread some news and insights with the rest of the community.